Thank you. I hope for the sake of the country, for the sake of his presidency, and the peace and stability of South Asia that President Obama does rethink this US-led military escalation. You know, I was in Moscow in 1985 when the Soviet forces, the Red Army forces, came over the bridge. I watched it on television there. Afghanistan has been the graveyard of empires, not just of the former Soviet Union, also of the British. Counterinsurgency experts believe that it would take up to 400,000 troops to quell the conflict. I think what the Obama administration has done, which we need to press harder on, is that there is an understanding, and no one is delusional, Rich. States have interests. They don't have good friends. They don't have compatibility problems. They have interests. And I think that the understanding that you need a regional diplomatic framework, and I don't think diplomacy is to be sneered at these times when we have seen, again, I repeat, in Iraq, the disastrous limits of military power. But I believe that a regional diplomatic strategy, bringing in the stakeholders in the region, including India, Iran, as the Obama administration has been wise to do, Russia, China, would provide far more stability if it was allied with development and reconstruction assistance and not the billions poured into not simply bringing troops into Afghanistan, but the logistical nightmare. The Soviets were on the border of Afghanistan. That seems to me as the best way to go. And there are already reports, and let's not forget that the occupation of Afghanistan has inflamed a nationalism in that country. The occupation in Iraq inflamed a nationalism. There are reports of the extremists inside Pakistan uniting with elements of the Taliban. If that's not destabilizing, I don't know what is. Finally, it's not 2001 anymore. This is 2009. What we're witnessing in the region is primarily experts who follow this carefully, a regional conflict between India and Pakistan. And to then inflame Afghanistan is going to make that region far more destabilizing, far more dangerous. The limits of military power, I think, is something we should not lose sight of. If you think of the great challenges of this century, climate crisis, genocidal conflict, the proliferation of nuclear weapons, stateless terrorists, global economic instability, why is military might the focus of too much of not only the Bush administration, but I would argue, unfortunately, that the Obama administration has an opportunity, and there are many progressives in Congress and around this country who are saying, use this crisis to look at this defense budget and think hard about how you can redirect some of that in more productive ways. On the issue of detention, of interrogation, there has been a break. There has been a sharp break. There is more work to be done to ensure that when the review of whether the military commissions system should be pushed aside in favor of a prosecute and clear in U.S. federal courts, which have had a long history of doing well in adjudicating with intelligence and security interests. That is a process that is still underway, Rich, so I think it's too early for you to argue that there will not be a more fundamental break. Guantanamo was probably the greatest single recruiting tool for terrorists in these last 8 years. The closing of it is the beginning, it's not the end, but the end of these policies of abusive detention, policies that have subverted the very values that we claim to be fighting for in the, quote, war on terror. That change allows America to re-engage the world in new ways. Last point on the G20. There is a crucial issue, looking back again at the Depression era. If we don't find a way to find a common strategy to rebuild global demand, to address the joblessness, there are reports that 30 million jobs may be lost, and that 200 million people may sink into poverty in the developing world because of the economic crisis which emanated from the center, from the United States. We have learned over these last decades what emerges from depressions in countries. I think again of 33. When Roosevelt came to power, Hitler was also elected. Not to be too grim, but we need to address the dangers of joblessness in order to avert an accelerating, metastasizing global depression. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich, 5 minutes.